Today on Locked On Red Wings, continuing our midseason player evaluations.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast, while Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably wondering, gee, why does their background look very plain today? There's not like a on today's show sheet. Well, that's because the bulk of the episode, we're going to be on share screen mode as we continue our player evaluations into the tier lists. But before we get to that, it'd be remiss of me to not ask how my co-host Scotty Bentley is doing today. Happy Tuesday, buddy. How's it going?
Happy Tuesday. You'd be remiss not to know how I was doing. No, doing pretty well. Monday's a busy day for me, but doing well.
Good. I mean, hey, it helps that we can knock out these recordings fairly early on Mondays. So if there's any breaking news 5 o'clock onward on a Monday, blame it on Scotty. He's busy in the evening.
Unfortunately, that is a fair criticism. Yeah.
All right, Scotty, without further ado, or you want to dive right back in?
Yeah, man. Yeah, let's do it. I know do we want to just start off with Razor? I know that we kind of like teased that a little bit, but that's obviously one of the bigger conversations remaining.
We should start with the Razor because we teased him at the end of yesterday's episode. But before we do that, we should just, in case anyone missed Sunday's episode or Monday's episode, we recorded it on Sunday for Monday. We put Patrick Kane and Alex Lyon in above and beyond expectations, and preface this with, these are our subjective midseason evaluations. We're doing something different from grading. That last few seasons we've done grading. This year we're doing, are they meeting or exceeding our expectations of them personally? So, because if you give a Veleno an A, it's different than a Larkin A, right? Because they're different players. So it's simpler to just say, are they meeting or exceeding or falling below our expectations? And we're doing it on a tier list, so there's a visual guide. So we recommend you guys watch this on YouTube rather than listen. That way you can see where everyone's falling. But Patrick Kane and Alex Lyon, above and beyond expectations. Joe Veleno, Moritz Seider, and Daniel Sprong exceeding expectations. Oli Mata, Jake Wollman meeting expectations, and James Reimer below expectations. No one is failing our expectations yet. There's still like
most of the roster remaining.
We have 15 players left. So from there now, Scotty, let's kick it off with Lucas Raymond. He's one we teased at the end of yesterday's episode, and I have a lot to say about him. And but I'm going to let you take it away, lead off with him. But I feel like we're going to be pretty lockstep. We usually are.
Yeah, this is one where I guess all of these are dependent on your preseason expectations of a player, but Raymond is one where it is a unique case where his preseason expectations amongst the fan base were very kind of spread out, right? There were some people that were expecting him to take a huge step forward this year. There were some people that, kind of soured on him after his, the sophomore slump, quote unquote. So he more than anybody else kind of had just a wide array of what people expected out of him. I am early on when I first glimpse, I was debating between meeting and exceeding. And I am pretty comfortable with exceeding expectations for him. Third on the team in points, 41 points in 50 games. Obviously, a lot of assists there. He leads the entire team in assists pretty comfortably as well. He has 28. The next closest is Ghost and DeBrincat at 25 each, and then Larkin at 24. So leading the entire team in assists, obviously is showing off his playmaking ability really well, not getting knocked off the puck nearly as much as he did last year. This is, again, it's kind of determined a little bit more, he's a little more subjective than everybody else, even because, people were all over the board on what they thought he was going to produce this current season we're now in, but in the upcoming year back in the summer. So maybe this is one that kind of changes from person to person, but for me, I think this is pretty comfortably in the exceeding expectations category. Going into the year, we wanted a step forward, but almost 30 assists at the All-Star break and over 40 points at the All-Star break, I think is a pretty big jump, a pretty nice jump. He had 45 points all of last year total. And in his strong rookie year, where everybody was really optimistic about him at 19 years old, he had 57, and he's on pace to pass that as well. So, yeah, super exciting year, super solid year, obviously showing the playmaking ability, playing with good talent as well, which certainly helps. But, I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Razor this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's on pace for 67 points right now, which, I mean, at what point do you certify it as a breakout year? For me, it's between above and beyond and exceeding expectations. I will say exceeding expectations because I believe in our preseason, profiles. We'd briefly talk about every player, what we expect of them. I think we said somewhere between 50 and 60 points would be a really solid season out of Lucas Raymond to get back to where he was. And now he's on pace for 67 points. And he flies a little bit. I feel like he flies a little bit under the radar for Red Wings fans because of the fact that he's not a big goal scorer. 13 goals is nice. It is. But he's a playmaker first and foremost. And everything you said is true as well. He's not getting knocked off the puck as much. He added that weight in the offseason. We talked about it, like the 8 pounds or whatever it was. But also he's drawing a lot of penalties because he plays very hard as well. He does not give up on plays, and it's benefiting. A lot of his points are coming on the power play. He's getting plenty of points at even strength as well. His assist totals are taking off, and it's generating more goals for the Detroit Red Wings. I think this is easy exceeding expectations. I mean, he flies under the radar, man. Like, we talk so much about Kane, DeBrincat, Seider, Larkin, because those are the guys who are scoring a lot of the goals, or Patrick Kane just in general is a big storyline. And we've been defending Seider and Wollman so much that Raymond's bounce back year from his sophomore slump has been flying under the radar. 41 points at 50 when, like you said, 45 all of last year. I mean, this has been a great season for Raymond. I think he's an easy exceeding expectations for the Red Wings.
I'm all about it, man.
Absolutely. So next up on the list is Alex DeBrincat, but I'm going to cheat. I don't want to get to Cat yet, mainly because I'll be honest, that's another big storyline. I want to put that off a little bit. I don't want to do back-to-back.
That might
big
be
ones.
the most interesting conversation on the entire roster.
Let's just move him all the way back here. I want to make the people wait for it. All right. There's a little
for
tease.
Sure. I think Chiarot's a slam dunk in exceeding. I mean, it's not that he's, a perfect player and that he's, becoming like top pair caliber or anything. But again, if we're basing it off of preseason, you have to remember the consensus public opinion of Ben Chiarot last summer. You have to go in your memory bank and remember just how down in the dumps and low every single person in this fan base was on Ben Chiarot this upcoming season. And he and Petrie both, obviously Petrie a little bit, I don't even see him.
He's on here.
Oh, he's toward the end there. Obviously him and Petrie together was something early on we questioned and now has turned into a solidified second pairing on this team. Chiarot's much improved from last season. If you're going on preseason expectations, I'm not sure anyone outside of maybe Alex Lyon epitomizes, shooting over what was expected of you than Ben Chiarot.
Yeah, I mean, he, analytically speaking, he just gets killed in every single game, right? Like, caved him. He and Petrie were, like, especially early on in the season, they were struggling together. But I feel like prior to his injury, like a lot of players in January, they began to find their groove together. And then once he got hurt, I feel like you really saw how much this team actually did need Ben Chiarot, because without Chiarot on the ice, Seider and Wollman were who were already getting the toughest assignments in the league, were getting even tougher assignments because they didn't trust Mata and Petrie, who played well together, albeit I will say those two played well together. Still weren't getting, they didn't trust them as the same assignments that they were trusting Chiarot with. Chiarot gets a pretty heavy workload, and that there is something to be said about that. And he has played a lot better than he has last season. Like, the analytics won't fall in love with him. But if you're just watching the game, he's tough to play against. And that's something that I don't think he was last year. And so for me, as somebody who was like, I won't call myself a Chiarot hater, but I was heavily critical of him last year and heavily critical going into this year to the point where I probably had a negative bias towards him. I can say I think he's exceeded expectations so far.
For sure. Yeah. Like I said, absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all.
Based on our expectations of him, that is.
For sure.
Which was going into the season, our expectations were like, he might be a candidate for 7th team, and he played so poor last year.
Correct. Yeah.
So let's go to a quick break. And when we return, we should be able to pump through these a little bit quicker, I feel, after we got Raymond out of the way. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're moving on now past Ben Chiarot. Next up, it looks like we got JT Compher. We got two of our redheads back to back here, both in our depth centers as well. Compher and Copp back to back here. Compher, I've been pleased with. This is going to be a tough one where I'm not sure if he's met or exceeded my expectations, because I feel like he's given us exactly what we were hoping for, which has been very good, reliable 2/3C, depending on where they're sliding him. Sometimes 1C if Larkin's out.
Yeah, I think Compher for me, I think is in the category of meeting. I think he's, we brought him in, and we in the summer went back and forth a little bit on who would be the 2C. There was still some, part of the fan base that was like, oh, maybe Andrew Copp. And I was like, it's probably JT Compher. And he's come in and been a solid 2C for this team. Has he, blown our expectations out of the water production wise? Like, no, right? I mean, he's been good, and he's been, again, what we expected. So nothing wrong with that. 7th on the team in points. Sorry, that was 7th on the team in assists, 6th on the team in points with 29 in 45 games. So over half a point a game, been solid, helps defensively as well, which is something that they cited a lot when they signed him as, one of the reasons why. Can go on special teams if you need him to as well. Pretty versatile player. I think in a perfect world, you'd like maybe the scoring to uptick a little bit, but I think this is pretty much on brand for what we expected out of Compher this year.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's tough too, because this is where the subjective part of your brain and the biased part of your brain is like, oh, he's been fun to watch, so you want to put him in exceeding. Whereas, I think objectively, you're right. Coming in on a 5-year deal, making $5 million, I think that he has been exactly what was sold to us, right? He's on pace to then again tie his career high in points, which he set last year. He's been everything that he was sold to be, and he's not much more than that, which is perfectly fine. Like, he's the player that he was signed to be, but he's not blowing the doors off. He's been very good, very reliable. So yeah, I think putting him in meeting expectations is fair.
Yeah, no problem with that.
Next up, you got Andrew Copp with his look at that jawline. Oh my goodness. Look at that jawline. Phenomenal stuff from Andrew Copp. This is a really tough one, Scotty. I'm not sure of what I want to do with him, because
it's a really tough one.
I felt like he's meeting the expectations we had for him last season. But then with the surgery and then just never really getting it started, and then the slow start to this year, it's hard to remember and even gauge what my expectations for Andrew Copp were. I obviously wanted a bounce back year, and in the month of January, we very much got that. Like he's at 24 points right now in 49 games played. He's on pace for shy of 50 points. He's probably going to again get around probably his second highest point total in his career. And he's been on a tear. He's already got 10 goals this season. He only had 9 all of last year. But where did my expectations lie? And that's where I struggle. I don't think he's definitely not below expectations, especially with how he turned things around in January. And that's recency bias. I understand that. With how he turned around in January and got back on the right tracks, I feel he's at minimum meeting. I just don't know if I can justify beyond that. It's recency bias is a real thing. What do you think?
Recency bias is a very real thing. It's tough. If this was just the month of January, he'd be the poster child for exceeding. You know what I mean? That
It was
would
great
be kind
in January.
of a slam dunk pick there. But yeah, certainly if you're taking the full season into account, he's almost exactly on pace for, like you said, around I don't know, man. I think I'm pretty comfortable with meeting. I think that overall for the season, it also depends on what your benchmark for expectations is, right? If you're doing going into this year, which I guess is what we're doing for everybody, so that should be what we do for him as well. That may be different than what our expectations were from season to season when he signed pen to paper too.
Well, and let's open our brains up a little bit, because I feel like we're getting a little bit pigeonholed looking at point totals right now. What is Andrew Copp? What was he signed to be, right? A two-way center who's very good in the faceoff dot, who can kill penalties. And he's been phenomenal on the penalty kill. That's been true all season, even when he wasn't producing. He's got a 53.1 faceoff percentage this year, which is absolutely incredible. And he's been right on par with his career average. His career average is 51.5, so actually a tick above that. A nice bounce back after last year. He only won 49.8%. So he is, looking at his career, I mean, he's right there with where he should be. And that's right where they signed him to be. So I think taking that into account, taking what his role is on this team, which is primarily penalty kill guy, depth center, especially now that they've kind of found that niche role with Michael Rasmussen and Christian Fischer on the third line. You know what? I'm fine going like solidly meeting expectations. I think he's meeting that expectation of being a two-way center that can kill penalties and win faceoffs, because he's doing that.
Yeah, no, and I also think that the expectations shift from when he signed the contract to this upcoming season, right? You added Comfer, you knew that he was going to slide down in on the depth chart, right, and kind of be that 3C rather than the guaranteed 2C and whatnot. So yeah, I'm totally cool with meeting. That's where my head, like I said, was at as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that Andrew Copp's last month and a half, like really getting the back on tracks with the point production as well, definitely puts him back in the meeting category. We got time for one more. Robbie Fabry's up next. This is another. So once you get past the top line on forward and defense, or the controversial guys, it gets harder to grade them. Robbie Fabry's been all over the lineup. He spent a little time at the beginning of the season on the IR, but he has been healthy since then. But he's very hot and cold when it comes to his goal scoring, which, here I go again, I'm falling right back down that pigeonhole, focusing on goal scoring. But that's kind of what Robbie Fabry's role is depth scoring from the wing. He's got 13 goals, another player with 13. He, Sprong, and Raymond, 21 points in 38 games played. He's, over a half point per game, which is great for a depth winger, but he provides very little in the way of defense. So he's kind of similar-ish to Daniel Sprong. They're not the same type of player. Daniel Sprong's like a pure shooter. Fabry's got a little bit more dynamics to his game.
Did you say dynasm?
Yeah, what's the word? Is there a way of saying that? Come on, you're the writer here.
Well, I mean, you can just reword the whole thing, I guess.
He's a little bit more dynamic, I think, in the offensive zone than Sprong, where Sprong's a little bit more one-dimensional, which is fine. I'm not criticizing either with that statement. It's just how they play their game, but both just nothing defensively. So when you talk about expectations, man, it's really frustrating sometimes, because he can be a black hole defensively, but we also know that he's not good defensively. So is that a demerit? It's hard to say.
Well, yeah, right. If it's truly based on expectations, then that's something you take into account. I I don't know. I think Fabry is kind of lined up for meeting. I wouldn't say that he's exceeded anyone. I mean, what does he have? 13 goals.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that he's blown past anyone's expectations. But as far as depth scoring goes, he's been about what we expected. You also have to remember he's been playing, which has been a nice pickup, versus the last couple of years prior. So that's always nice. And obviously that is not what we're not doing this based on the fact that he's just like finally fully healthy, but. I do think that expectations for him were just like, please stay on the ice and provide some depth scoring. And he's done both of those things.
Yeah, he has. And, he can only max out at 70 games in this season because the Red Wings have played 50, but he's played 38. He's on pace for 38 points on the season, which would break his career high he set in his rookie year when he played 72 games. So this is he's on pace for a really good season with the Red Wings. I hope that he can maintain that, and he, does so because this team could use the depth scoring. Yeah, I think I think it's a tough argument to say below or exceeding. I think he's pretty firmly in meeting expectations given the type of player.
I agree.
Let's go to another quick break, and when we return, we'll finish up how many ever we can get to in this episode of Locked On Red Wings. It's the halfway point of the NHL season, and we still got another 4 days until the Red Wings play again, Vancouver on Saturday. But regardless of where the Red Wings are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether or not studs like a Robbie Fabry or a Patrick Kane, a Lucas Raymond will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Red Wings fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks, and you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are going to spend the rest of the episode doing as many as we can, and then it sounds like by the pace we're going, we'll clean it up tomorrow and probably give you a GM and head coach expectations evaluation for this season as well. But Scotty, next up, we got, I'm drawing a blank on the face. Christian Fischer. See, it's always a gamble with these faces, man. I'm so used to seeing the numbers on the back. But fun fact, nobody cares, but I'm going to tell you this. Road to the show, right? I wear number 2 because of Yuri Fisher. So I wanted to wear number 2 with the Tigers. He can't. I was like, okay, I'll do Christian Fischer. 36, can't wear that either. So I'm now wearing 37. I wanted to wear 22. I was like, Fisher twice. Nope, can't do that. Okay, 8. He wore that his rookie year. Nope, can't do that. All the numbers I wanted were taken.
That's crazy, dude. That's a cool story.
That's crazy. I know. That's why I summed it up.
You tell that one at parties, yeah?
Yeah, everyone laughs.
That's good. That's good.
Weirdly, they point, though, too, when they laugh. I don't understand what the point is. Christian Fischer, Scotty. I mean, dude, listen, this is where personal bias is going to come in hardcore.
I don't think so.
We love Christian Fischer.
Yeah, I don't think this is personal bias either, though. Like, this is a guy that when we acquired him, the entire fan base was debating, like, is he going to be the 13th forward scratched? And now he is a fixture on the penalty kill and a fixture in the lineup every single night. Like, this, I don't even think that, like, we do love him. Absolutely. He's one of my favorite players on the team. I will openly admit that. But I don't think this has anything to do with personal bias. If you go, again, based on preseason expectations of the players and what their roles are now, Christian Fischer is exceeding, honestly, higher than probably most people on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you said the fan base collectively was like thinking he was the 13th forward, I think you could take it even deeper than that. I think collectively the fan base was going, who? I think most people hadn't really heard of Christian Fisher because he played for the Coyotes and they don't get a lot of media love, deservedly so, probably because of their situation. But I didn't know anything about the guy. I saw they had 27 points last year with the Arizona Coyotes, a nice depth piece. He's not going to sniff that point total, but that's not necessarily his role anyways. But like you said, he's become a fixture. We knew he was a penalty kill specialist and he could play center if need be, but mostly a winger. But I mean, we thought he was going to be, and that's why it's based on our expectations of the player, not like necessarily a realistic like conglomerate expectation of a guy. But we both were in the mindset he was going to be a 13th forward, penalty kill specialist, limited minutes on the wing, but now he's a fixture on that third line that's been crushing it all of January. So yeah, I think easy exceeding expectations.
100%.
Or is he above and beyond? No, I'm just kidding. If he was on pace for 27 points again, then yeah, I would say above and beyond.
Yeah,
but
correct.
Anyways, from there, Scotty.
That's Ghost Despair.
Thank you.
I think this is a pretty interesting conversation, actually. It's tough, man, because like we knew, right? Like we knew that he was going to be an offensive force that probably left, a little bit to be desired on the defensive side of the puck. I think he's kind of epitomized that. But in the same breath, that like he is fourth on the team in points. Like the only people that have more points on the Detroit Red Wings than Shane Gostisbehere is Larkin, DeBrincat, Raymond. That's it. And that was a line for a while, right? Pre-Kane, that was those three were on a line together. So it literally, if you remove the beginning of the season's top line, he leads the team in points. So it's really hard for me to be like, yeah, this guy has been, like an abject failure, or he's below expectations, or he's, like this is because of his struggles defensively and whatnot. Like that means it hasn't been a good move. Like I think he still is fitting his role really well. January's been an interesting month for him as well, which I think kind of adds into this as well.
Yeah, he's got 20 of his 32 points have come on the power play, which is exactly where you expect them. He started off the season. He's kind of the reverse of like your Copp conversation or a Rasmussen conversation we will have, where they're players that started off kind of slow, and then as the season progressed, and especially in January when the team was playing well, he played super well. Gostisbehere is the opposite. Started the season super hot and has since cooled off on the point totals. Most of his points have come on the power play, which is to be expected, via secondary assists most of the time. I don't know, man. He had such a rough January, and part of that is he had zero chemistry with Justin Holl, that like my recency bias really wants me to put him in below expectations. But I also, we knew he wasn't good defensively, and we knew he was trying to score points, and he has scored points, even if it is secondary assists. It's just, he was so good at the start, but recently he's just not been very good whatsoever. But he, like you said, point totals, right? You signed to be an offensive defenseman and help this team get points, and he's doing that. I don't know, man. It's really tough. I don't know. I can't personally put him in exceeding, just because of you could call it recency bias again, but I can't put him in exceeding.
I can't put him in below, so we can put him in meeting then, if you can't put him in exceeding.
All right. Fair
Which,
enough.
I think is fair, too. I don't think that's just, the lesser of two evils. Like, again, we knew he was going to struggle defensively, especially if he didn't find a person to pair with that he had good chemistry with, and we knew that he was going to go out there and produce points, and he has done exactly that pretty much. So
I'm just not going to feel comfortable no matter what zone we put him in. Like if we would have put him in below, I would have felt satisfied, because even though we knew he wasn't good defensively, he's been so bad defensively that I'm like, that's justifiable. But then again, you look, he leads all the defense in points. He's been great on the power play, which is what you wanted him to be.
He leads all of your non-top line forwards in points.
Exactly.
It's not just like, oh, he's good point totals for a defenseman. He literally, the only three people ahead of him in points, like I said, are DeBrincat, Larkin, and Raymond. That's it. He is fourth on the team in points. Like that's not just like, oh, he's good for a defenseman. He leads most of your forwards in points as well. Like he does bring something to the table. It's just, again, this season has very much been at the cost, maybe not directly at the cost, but you put him out there at the cost of him struggling defensively as well. And that has very clearly been a thing too. So I think meeting is honestly fair. I think the bottom part of meeting expectations is a pretty fair place to put him, because that's kind of what we expected him to be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Scotty, I think that does it. I mean, we can squeeze one more in, but we have 8 players left. It looks like we can knock that out tomorrow, finish up our player evaluations, and be done with it. Wash our hands.
Yeah, I don't think are any of these quick. There's actually some pretty decent conversations around everybody left here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think who the quickest would
Maybe
be.
Cleem Costin is quicker.
It's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, it depends. Do you want it? You can do one more. You can do Cleem real quick if you want.
Sure. Yeah, let's do Cleem Costin right now really quickly and then get out of here.
All right, Cleem Costin.
I think this is the poster child for meeting expectations. You didn't bring him in with the expectation to get points. You brought him in because he wanted to be a presence and a physical presence, and he has not produced really any points, but he is a guy that I think most people in this fan base want in the lineup every night as well.
I could make an argument for him to be below expectations if I really wanted to be a
sure. I guess I just I don't think anyone went into the season and was like, this guy's gonna put up 10 goals. Like,
I mean, besides a couple of times where he stood up for teammates, which is what you want from him, I feel like he has kind of been a non-factor in a lot of hockey games. He shows flashes of having these nice hands. Did you
expect him to be an X-factor player in hockey games going into the
season?
No,
but he had 21 points last year. And granted, he played with Edmonton, and they have some really talented guys. But I was expecting a little bit more than 4 points through 30. And I know, again, I mean, I don't want to get caught in the point total pigeonhole. But I mean, he's been fine as a grit player, fine as a physical force. He's gotten into a couple fights, standing up for guys, which is the primary reason you brought him, which is true. But 4 points in 30 games, that's really, really slow. I mean, across an 82-point season, you're looking at 11 points.
Yeah, which would be the second most in his NHL career.
I guess. Yeah, I guess.
I'm not saying anything you're saying is wrong. I'm just saying, if you expected a high point total out of him, that's I don't know. Maybe that, again, that's just difference in what expectations were from person to person going into the season. But 11, he's literally only eclipsed double-digit point totals once, and it was, to be fair, absolutely, it was just last season, and he had over 20. But I don't know. This was never a guy that I was going to rely on for points. I don't think that's why he was in the lineup. I'm okay with either. I think I'm not saying your argument is invalid. I would put him at meeting, but I also very much see if somebody was like, hey, I think Cleem Costin hasn't lived up to what you brought him in to do or what I expected him to do, I would completely understand that viewpoint.
And he also only plays 10 minutes a night. So I guess, all things considered, I guess meeting expectations. We're getting very heavy. Everyone's exceeding or meeting expectations, but I guess that's more of a sign because the team's winning, right?
The team's in a playoff spot, and our expectations for the team as a whole was to be one of the better teams to miss the playoffs. So,
but there's a couple guys on here tomorrow that I think are definitely going to be at least below expectations.
Yeah, I think we kind of saved a decent amount of the guys that are going to be below meeting all the people that have a chance. Obviously Reimer's already down there, but
so I guess tomorrow is going to be very polarizing on polar opposites, because you're going to have guys like Larkin, right? And then you're going to have guys like Justin.
Yeah, Larkin obviously won't be below expectation or anything, but Husso's obviously a conversation. Hall is going to be certainly a conversation to have on how low he falls. Rasmussen turned his season around, thank goodness, or else, even then, I still think that's actually kind of a conversation. DeBrinket's obviously a big one. Yeah, there's obviously, I just read off the names of who's left, I guess, but a lot of tomorrow is going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. When this is all said and done, when we're finished with all this, I'll tweet out the link to the tier maker, and you guys can, tweet at us what your guys's, personal is. In the meantime, feel free to comment, call us idiots, call us homers, call us biased, or agree with us. That's also an option, if you like what we said. Scotty, you have any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.